Well, welcome back to the show. Again, this is the Cleary Drive with Professor Chamberlin. I am your host. We are talking all things human, all things relationship, emotions, all those things at play. I am an assistant professor here at Cleary University, as well as a licensed professional counselor. I do some counseling with students. And one of the things we've been talking a little bit about this past week is fear. So what I want to do in this segment is talk a little bit about the differences between fear and anxiety, what those two things sort of bring up within us, how to maybe manage those things, and sort of leave you with this sense of what can I do to care for myself, to care for others, and even actually have an impact on this sort of context right now in Livingston County and the world around us here, even larger in the state of Michigan. As I think our anxieties, our fears can trigger other people's anxieties and fears and really have this sort of systemic movement and energy through sort of the world around us right now. So I want to try and speak to those things, leave you with a sense of how you can care for yourself, some practices, some things to engage in. And I may do that either in this segment or do one more segment after this. So let's get started. So if we're thinking about fear and anxiety, these are two very normal, very biological, physiological experiences that our body has. Our brain is this incredible alert system that can tell us when there is a threat to something. You have sort of that sense of this fight or flight responses that sometimes we can have, but our brain is really good at giving us information about what's going on as we take in life around us. So in many ways, I want to say that fear is this sense of a reaction to a threat, and anxiety can be defined in some sense with those words too, but there's a differentiation I want to make as we talk about the two. Thinking about fear, this sense of our body having a reaction to a threat. Now, the big difference here with fear and anxiety is it's often with fear, it's something that we're aware of, something that we can actually observe. So let's think of an example here. I'm in this really small recording booth, and outside the recording booth is our student computer lab. And so I want you to imagine if Professor David Hayes and our provost and interim president Emily Barnes were to sort of together somehow usher in a lion. They sort of wrestled a lion, captured it, because they are gifted hunters and capturers of wild beasts. They somehow wrangle a lion and let it go free in the computer lab outside my door, and then lock the door, and then they send me a text, have fun, a couple of different emojis. That is our example here. Now, I look out, so this studio has two different windows, so I can see every angle of the computer lab. And essentially, I am going to see that lion that they so graciously let go in the computer lab. Now, here is the difference of fear. My senses will observe that lion. I will see that lion. And that information goes right through my brainstem, goes right into the limbic system where our emotions are all activated and alive, and my whole body would be flooded with fear. Fear is the sense of our minds, our body's reaction to an observable threat. So in this sense, I can see something that I should indeed be frightened of. That's the sense of fear. The main difference, if we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety, and again, with fear, if I then call my spouse Annie and I say, there is a lion, David and Emily hate me, there's a lion in the computer lab, it will also trigger her fear. Now, again, the difference is it is an actual observable threat to my survival and my life. That is fear. Now, if we sort of switch gears and think a little bit about anxiety here, there, again, a normal human reaction and experience. Anxiety is often, however, irrational. Fear is also based on the now, present, current moments in many ways. I think it can also be experienced when we think about things in the future, but anxiety is more so an irrational fear. It can be sort of this, it's our brains and our biological reaction to a perceived threat. The difference here is that it's often future-oriented, and it can very much at times be considered irrational. It doesn't necessarily require a specific situation or circumstance or a specific stimulus. So whereas the fear, there is a line outside my door, anxiety is more based on some things I'm thinking about, but also often based on unknowns and very future-oriented. So I don't have data necessarily. I don't have proof of why I should be nervous or worried or afraid, in this sense, anxious. That's the difference between anxiety and fear. And so it can be really ambiguous at times, where also it can create sort of this anticipation experience within us, and we can be really anxious about things that are not even real and may never even present an actual threat in the moment. So that's sort of the way to differentiate those two things. I'm going to, in the next segment, speak a little bit more to what we can do, share a little bit more about each of those things, but then close with providing some things we can do to care for ourselves in response to those two experiences. So take care, stay tuned, and I will be right back.